You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're stuck because you keep avoiding the responsibility you know belongs to you. That's uncomfortable to hear, and it should be, because some part of you recognizes it immediately. You want confidence, but you keep negotiating with yourself. You want meaning, but you keep choosing comfort. You want order, but you tolerate chaos and then resent the world for it. And the cost isn't abstract. It shows up as anxiety you can't explain, anger that feels justified, and exhaustion that never seems to lift. You tell yourself you're overwhelmed, but what's really happening is that your life has lost its structure, and with it, your sense of direction. Every small act of avoidance teaches you something about who you are becoming, whether you admit it or not. The question isn't whether this matters. It's what happens if you keep going this way, and what becomes possible if you don't. You're not exhausted because life is unbearable. You're exhausted because you're divided against yourself, and that division is costing you more than you're willing to admit. There's a part of you that knows quite precisely what should be done next. And there's another part of you that delays, distracts, negotiates, and postpones. And the tension between those two parts is what's draining you. You tell yourself you're tired, burned out, unmotivated. But that's not the root of it. The root is that you keep breaking small promises to yourself, and somewhere deep down, you sense it in the background like a low hum of guilt you never fully silence. And here's the loop you might not want to look at yet. The more you ignore what you know you should do, the less you trust yourself, and the less you trust yourself, the harder everything becomes. Picture something ordinary. It's late evening. You told yourself you'd do one small thing today, send the email. Clean the desk, go for a short walk, read a few pages, turn off the phone at a reasonable hour. Nothing heroic, just something modest and sane, but the day slipped. You felt off. You told yourself you deserved a break, so you scrolled. You watched, you numbed yourself a little, and now it's night. You're lying in bed, phone still in your hand, and there's that familiar thought, I'll start tomorrow. And for a brief moment, that thought feels soothing. It lets you off the hook, but it doesn't last, because right after it comes something else, quiet, uncomfortable, but unmistakable. A sense that you didn't show up for yourself again. No one punished you. No one even noticed. But you noticed, and that matters more than you think. The real problem isn't that you lack motivation. It's that you're practicing self-betrayal in small daily doses. You say one thing to yourself in the morning and do another thing by night. You want confidence, but you avoid the discomfort of becoming competent. You want self-respect, but you keep choosing what's easy over what's right. And each time you do that, something inside you shifts. Not dramatically, quietly. You become a little less solid, a little less reliable to yourself. That's not a moral condemnation, it's a psychological fact. You are training yourself through repetition to treat your own intentions as negotiable. And when your own word doesn't carry weight with you, why would the world feel stable? Why would your mind feel calm? Here's the psychological pattern, and it's worth understanding carefully. Your brain is constantly updating a model of who you are based on what you actually do, not what you say you value. Every time you intend to act and then don't, your nervous system learns something. It learns that intentions are cheap. That discomfort is to be avoided. That short-term relief takes priority over long-term coherence. Over time, this creates fragmentation. You start needing external pressure, emotional hype or crisis, level urgency to move at all. That's when people say, I just can't motivate myself. But motivation isn't the problem. Motivation was never meant to carry that load. Self-trust used to do that, and you eroded it. And there's a cost to this that accumulates whether you acknowledge it or not. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you train yourself to be someone you can't quite respect. That's the price. You lose the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you'll do what you said you'd do. And once that's gone, you start trying to replace it with motivation, with inspiration, with endless planning and thinking. But thinking won't save you here. You don't get to think your way out of a problem you behaved your way into. You have to act your way out calmly, precisely, repeatedly. You'll have an excuse ready for this. Everyone does. You'll say, I'll start tomorrow, or I just need to feel better first, or once things settle down. But look closely at that. Tomorrow is a fantasy that protects you from the responsibility of today. It's a convenient abstraction that lets you postpone action without admitting you're avoiding it. And avoidance feels harmless in the moment, but avoidance compounds. Avoidance doesn't make the problem go away. It makes you smaller in relation to it. And here's the hard line you may need to hear, stated plainly and without drama. You are complicit in your own stagnation, not because you're evil or weak, but because you keep choosing relief over alignment. Now, the solution is not to attempt some massive overhaul of your life. That would only feed the same pattern, grand plans followed by collapse. The solution is much smaller, and that's why it works. You pick one behavior you already know is undermining you one, not 10, something specific. And you remove it for 24 hours, just one day, not forever. At the same time, you replace it with a defined, modest action. When the urge to default hits, and it will, you do the replacement for 10 minutes, no debate, no analysis. 10 minutes is short enough that you can't plausibly say it's impossible. This isn't about willpower, it's about clarity. Imagine how this looks in real life. You get home tired, phone buzzing, familiar pull toward distraction. Normally, you'd give in almost automatically, but instead, you notice the urge. You don't judge it. You don't dramatize it. You simply act. You put the phone down and do the replacement. 10 minutes of walking, writing, cleaning, reading, 10 minutes. That's it. And later that night, you do one more crucial thing. You write one sentence, just one. Did I keep my word today? That's the proof. Evidence matters, because your brain responds to evidence, not intentions. Something subtle but profound happens when you do this, even once. You start to reassemble yourself. You feel a small but real increase in internal solidity. You're less divided, and you might notice something surprising. You feel a bit more energized, not less. That's because energy returns when your actions and your values stop fighting each other. You're not tired, you were divided, and division is exhausting. As this repeats, your identity begins to shift, not in some abstract affirmational way, but behaviorally. You become someone whose word has weight, someone who doesn't need constant self-negotiation, someone who can be trusted by himself. And that is no small thing. Self-trust is the foundation upon which responsibility, order, and meaning are built. Without it, everything downstream collapses. So here's the challenge, and it's reasonable. It's not heroic, it's human scale. Today, not tomorrow. You choose one small thing and you do it as promised. Then you notice what happens. You don't get to think your way out. You act your way out. Start small. Start today. Because your future is listening. Your anxiety is not random, and it is not a mystery. It isn't an attack from nowhere. And it isn't proof that you're fragile or broken. It's a signal. And the uncomfortable truth, the one you may already sense but haven't fully articulated, is that your anxiety is proportional to the amount of responsibility you're avoiding. That's the loop. You feel anxious, so you pull back. You pull back, so your life becomes less structured. Less structured life produces more anxiety, and around it goes. You want peace, but you refuse the burden that creates it. You want calm, but you won't aim yourself at anything demanding. And so your mind never rests. Think about a moment that's probably familiar. You wake up already tense. Nothing terrible has happened yet. But there's a vague pressure in your chest. You open your phone, not because you need information, but because you don't want to feel that pressure. Messages, headlines, noise. You tell yourself you're just trying to get oriented. But underneath that, there's a list you don't want to look at. An email you haven't answered, a bill you haven't opened, a health appointment you've postponed, a conversation you've been avoiding. None of these things are catastrophic on their own, but together they form a kind of background threat. And instead of confronting it, you hover, you drift, you stay busy without being effective. By midday, the anxiety is worse, not better, and you still haven't named why. The real problem is not that you have too much to do. It's that responsibility has become undirected. It has nowhere to land. Responsibility that is accepted and acted upon turns into meaning and order. Responsibility that is avoided doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes anxiety. Avoidance doesn't remove the weight. it multiplies it. You feel it as nervous energy, irritability, mental fog. You tell yourself you need clarity before you act. But that's backward. Clarity comes after commitment, not before. And here's the line you might not want to hear, but need to. You are not overwhelmed because life is too heavy. You are overwhelmed because you keep refusing to pick something up. There's a psychological reason for this, and it's worth understanding calmly. Without self-contempt, human beings regulate their emotional state through purposeful action. When you voluntarily shoulder a responsibility, even a small one, your nervous system receives a very specific message. I am capable. I am oriented. I am not helpless. When you avoid responsibility, your system receives the opposite message. It interprets the world as a place of unbounded threat. Anxiety increases because there is no structure telling your mind what matters and what doesn't. That's why people with very little external pressure can feel more anxious than people carrying heavy loads. The load gives shape to their attention. Chaos does not. There's also a cost to prolonged avoidance that you might be underestimating. The longer you delay responsibility, the more it expands in your imagination. Tasks become monsters. Decisions feel irreversible. You start to believe you need perfect conditions before you begin, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, your world shrinks. You stop volunteering for challenges. You stop trusting yourself under pressure. You begin to resent the very things that could stabilize you. That resentment is a warning sign. It's the psyche protesting against being underused. You'll have an excuse ready here too, everyone does. You'll say, I'm too overwhelmed to start, or I need to get my head straight first. But look closely at that logic. You're overwhelmed because you haven't started. You don't need to feel ready to act. You need to act to feel ready. That's the reversal that changes everything. And here's the firm accountability moment stated plainly. If you remain in this pattern, you are complicit in your own stagnation. Not because you intended harm, but because you keep choosing avoidance over engagement. Knowing better and doing nothing is still a choice. The solution is not to solve your entire life. That would be absurd. The solution is to give your responsibility a target. One target, something concrete enough that your mind can organize itself around it. Choose a responsibility that produces visible order in 20 minutes. That's the rule. Visible order. 20 minutes. Pay one bill. Book the appointment. Do 20 minutes of the task you've been circling for weeks. Evidence matters. Your nervous system needs proof, not promises. And when you do this, something subtle but immediate happens. You feel a slight reduction in anxiety, not because the problem is solved, but because you are aiming. Aim reduces chaos. Aim tells your mind what to prioritize. Imagine how this plays out in real life. You're sitting there feeling restless, heart slightly racing, mind scattered. You notice the urge to distract yourself again. Instead of following it, you pick one thing. You open the bill. You don't catastrophize. You simply act. You make the payment or set up the plan. It takes 15 minutes. When you're done, the world hasn't transformed. But you feel a quiet shift, a small pocket of calm opens up. Not relief in the sense of escape, but relief in the sense of alignment. You did what you said you would do, and your system registers that. This is why people often say with surprise, I felt better almost immediately. It's not because everything is fixed. It's because the direction is now correct. Anxiety diminishes when your trajectory improves. Even if your position hasn't changed much yet. Direction matters more than distance. And this is something you can test, not believe. You don't need faith in it. You need to try it once and observe the result honestly. As you repeat this process, your identity begins to shift in a very specific way. You stop seeing yourself as someone overwhelmed by life and start seeing yourself as someone who stabilizes chaos. That's not arrogance, that's competence. You become someone who can be trusted with responsibility, including your own. And that has downstream effects. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your resentment decreases. You're less reactive because you're less lost. Meaning begins to appear not as a feeling, but as a byproduct of engagement. There's a deeper contrast here that's worth stating clearly. You want peace, but you avoid responsibility. You want confidence, but you refuse commitment. You want meaning, but you won't accept the weight that produces it. Those contradictions are not sustainable. One side has to give, and if you don't choose deliberately, the choice will be made for you, usually in the form of prolonged anxiety and quiet despair. That's not a threat, it's a description. So here's the challenge, and it's reasonable. Today, not tomorrow. You choose one responsibility that produces visible order in 20 minutes. You do it fully. You don't half complete it. You don't negotiate with yourself. You do it, and then you notice what happens. You pay attention to the reduction in internal noise, however small, and then you do it again tomorrow. You don't wait for motivation. You let action generate it. Start small, start today. Because order doesn't arrive through thought alone. It arrives when someone decides to carry what they've been avoiding and discovers they're stronger than they thought. You're more affected by your surroundings than you're willing to admit. You like to think your problems are abstract, philosophical, economic, psychological. But a large portion of what's weighing on you is far more concrete than that. It's sitting right in front of you. It's the disorder you live inside every day and have learned gradually to stop seeing. And here's the confronting truth that tends to unsettle people. Your environment is not neutral. It's shaping you, training you, and in many ways telling the truth about how you're living. If you feel distracted, resentful, and perpetually behind, there's a deeper reason you're stuck, and it's closer than you think. Consider something ordinary, almost embarrassingly simple. You wake up already irritated. You don't know why. You tell yourself it's stress, or the world, or other people. You sit down at your desk, or walk into your room, or open your phone, and immediately you feel a kind of internal resistance. Papers piled, clothes half folded, notifications stacked like unanswered questions. Nothing is screaming at you, but everything is whispering at once. You move things around without finishing anything. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later. And then you wonder why you can't focus, why your patience is thin, why every small obstacle feels like an insult. That reaction didn't come from nowhere. It was trained. The real problem here isn't mess in the superficial sense. It's what disorder does to your perception of control and responsibility. You want moral authority, but your life is disordered. You want clarity, but your environment is chaotic. You want to feel grounded, but you're surrounded by signals that tell your nervous system nothing is finished, nothing is settled, and nothing is under control. And so your attention gets taxed before you even begin the day. Disorder steals your attention like a tax you never agreed to pay. And once your attention is gone, so is your capacity to aim, to decide, to act with precision. There's a psychological mechanism operating here, and it's remarkably consistent. Human beings rely on their immediate environment to scaffold their sense of agency. When your surroundings are ordered, your mind doesn't have to waste energy tracking unresolved details. When your surroundings are chaotic, your brain treats that as unfinished business, open loops that demand monitoring. Over time, this increases cognitive load, elevates stress, and reinforces a subtle but corrosive belief that you are someone things happen to, rather than someone who brings things into order. That belief doesn't stay in one room. It spreads. There is also a moral dimension to this that people tend to resist acknowledging. Your environment is a moral document. It records your decisions. It reflects your priorities. It tells the truth about what you tolerate. If your space is neglected, it's not because you're incapable. It's because you've been avoiding responsibility in small, habitual ways. And here's the cost of that avoidance. The longer disorder persists, the more it trains you to feel like a victim of circumstances. Resentment grows. And resentment is dangerous because it gives you a justification to withdraw further. You begin blaming the world for a chaos you haven't confronted. You'll have an excuse here as well. You'll say, cleaning doesn't really matter, or I have bigger problems than this. But that's precisely the mistake. You think order is trivial because you underestimate its psychological power. You want meaning, but you avoid responsibility. You want to change the world, but you won't manage your own square meter. And that contradiction doesn't go unnoticed by your psyche. You know, better than this. You know that ignoring small responsibilities erodes your confidence to take on larger ones, and if you continue down that path, you are complicit in your own stagnation, not through malice but through neglect. The corrective action here is deliberately modest and precisely defined. You do not attempt to fix everything. That would only overwhelm you and reinforce the same pattern of failure. Instead, you select one space, physical or digital, and you bring it into complete order. Complete means complete. Everything has a place. No piles, no ladder box, no halfway measures. This matters because completion changes how your mind registers effort. A finished task provides closure. Closure restores agency. Agency restores dignity. This can be something very concrete. You clean your desk until there is nothing on it that doesn't belong there, or you organize one drawer, not 10, or you take your phone, which is now an extension of your nervous system, and you delete 50 useless items, organize the home screen, and turn off 3 non-essential notifications. These are not cosmetic changes. They are neurological signals. They tell your brain that you are capable of setting boundaries and enforcing them, and that has consequences far beyond the space itself. Imagine what this looks like in practice. You decide calmly that tonight you will bring one area into order. You don't rush, you don't distract yourself. You notice resistance because there will be resistance. Disorder is familiar, order demands effort, but you persist. When you're done, you step back and look at what you've created. The room hasn't become sacred ground, but it has become truthful. There is less noise, less friction, and something subtle happens inside you. You feel a small increase in self-respect. Not because someone praised you, but because you did what you said you would do. That shift matters more than most people realize because identity is not built through grand declarations. It's built through repeated evidence. Each time you bring order where there was chaos, you reinforce the identity of someone who confronts reality rather than avoiding it. You become someone who stops lying with their surroundings, and that identity change propagates. You find it easier to speak clearly, easier to plan, easier to tolerate frustration without becoming bitter. Order in your environment makes honesty in your thinking possible. There's an important contrast here that deserves repetition. You think your anger is caused by the world, but very often your anger is displaced guilt. Guilt for tolerating conditions, you could improve. You think you're overwhelmed by complexity, but you're actually exhausted by unfinished business. You think you need motivation. But what you need is order, and order is not imposed from above. It is created piece by piece by someone willing to take responsibility for what is immediately in front of them. So here's the challenge, and it is neither dramatic nor optional. Today, not someday, you choose one space, and you bring it into full order you define done clearly. And you finish it. You don't rationalize stopping early. You don't look for a shortcut. You complete the task and observe the effect it has on your internal state, and then you do it again tomorrow, somewhere else. You don't wait to feel different. You let disciplined action produce the difference. This matters because order is not the opposite of creativity or freedom. Order is the precondition for both. Without it, your energy leaks out through resentment, distraction, and fatigue. With it, you gain the stability required to aim at something meaningful. Start where you are. Start with what you can control. Start today. Because if you refuse to bring order to your own life, you will continue to resent the world for a chaos that is at least in part your responsibility to address. If you don't choose what is difficult, life will choose something far more punishing for you, and it will not ask your permission first. That's the confronting truth people sense, but try not to articulate, because once you see it clearly, neutrality disappears. You are no longer simply getting by. You are either voluntarily moving towards something meaningful, or you are being carried slowly, quietly toward decline. There is no stable middle ground. And the reason you feel uneasy when you hear that is because some part of you already knows which direction you've been drifting. Think about a moment that doesn't seem dramatic at all. You've finished the day's obligations, or at least the minimum you can justify. You're tired, not exhausted, in a heroic way, just dull, flat, unmotivated. You sit down telling yourself you've earned a break. You reach for the familiar comforts, Screens, snacks, noise. You tell yourself this is rest, you deserve it. And in the moment it does feel like relief. The pressure drops, the edge softens. But later, maybe that night, maybe the next morning, something else appears. A vague dissatisfaction, a sense that the day slipped through your fingers, that you avoided something you should have faced. That feeling isn't random. It's your conscience reacting to sedation, masquerading as rest. The real problem isn't that you seek comfort. Comfort has its place. The problem is that comfort has become your primary strategy for dealing with life. You want meaning, but you keep choosing what's easy. You want a life that feels worthwhile, but you negotiate endlessly with yourself to avoid effort. And here's the psychological reality you have to contend with. Comfort is not rest. Comfort is sedation. Rest restores your capacity to engage. Sedation numbs you so you don't have to. One prepares you for responsibility. The other trains you to avoid it. There is a tragic realism here that people resist because it sounds harsh until you understand it properly. Life involves suffering. That's not a pessimistic claim. It's an observation. The question is not whether you will suffer, but whether the suffering you endure will be meaningful or pointless. Voluntary difficulty, chosen responsibility, produces suffering that strengthens you. Avoided difficulty produces suffering that degrades you. If you do not choose your burden, you will carry a heavier one later: regret, resentment, and the corrosive sense that you wasted your own potential. There's a behavioral pattern underlying this that's worth examining carefully. When you repeatedly avoid what you know you should do, your brain learns that discomfort is intolerable. It lowers your threshold for effort. Tasks that once seemed manageable begin to feel overwhelming. You become increasingly sensitive, increasingly reactive, increasingly dependent on comfort to regulate your emotions. Over time, this erodes competence. And competence is the foundation of confidence. Without it, you don't just feel bad. You become fragile. That fragility then justifies more avoidance. It's a vicious cycle, and it ends the same way every time unless it's interrupted deliberately. You'll have a justification ready here as well. You'll say, I deserve a break, or I've been through a lot, or I'll push harder when things improve. And there is truth in those statements up to a point, but when they become habitual, they turn into rationalizations. You know better than this. You know the difference between necessary recovery and endless indulgence, and if you keep choosing comfort over challenge, despite knowing where it leads, you are complicit in your own stagnation. That's not a condemnation. It's a call to responsibility. The corrective action is not extreme. It's precise. You define hard properly. Hard does not mean reckless or punishing. Hard means the thing you negotiate with yourself about, the thing you delay, the thing you rationalize away. And then you impose a simple rule: no 0 days. For the next 30 days, you do at least one thing each day that you do not want to do, but know you should. 1. Not 10. Consistency matters more than intensity. You are not trying to prove something to the world. You are rebuilding trust with yourself. To make this workable, you categorize the difficulty so it doesn't remain vague. 1 physical challenge each week: exercise, movement, effort. 1 administrative challenge: paperwork, finances, scheduling, organization. 1 relational challenge: an honest conversation, a boundary, an expression of responsibility. You rotate. You keep it small enough to sustain, but real enough to count. And you track it. Evidence matters. Your identity is shaped by what you repeatedly do, not what you intend. Picture how this unfolds in daily life. It's early evening. You feel the familiar pull toward comfort. Your body wants to shut down. Your mind wants distraction. Instead of arguing with yourself endlessly, you refer to the rule. No 0 days. You pick the thing you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a walk when you'd rather sit. Maybe it's opening a document you've postponed. Maybe it's sending a message you've been dreading. You don't dramatize it, you act. And when it's done, something important happens. You don't feel euphoric. You feel solid, quietly proud, more like yourself. That feeling is not trivial. It's the sensation of alignment, of doing what you said you would do despite resistance. And that is the foundation of meaning. Meaning is not found through comfort. It's discovered through responsibility, voluntarily accepted. As you repeat this process, your identity shifts in a specific direction. You become someone who can tolerate difficulty without collapsing. Someone who chooses growth over decay. Someone whose life is structured around intention rather than impulse. There's a crucial contrast here that deserves repetition. You think comfort will save you from suffering. It won't. It will only postpone it and make it worse. You think avoiding effort preserves your energy. It doesn't. It drains it. You think meaning will appear once you feel ready. It won't. Meaning appears when you act despite not feeling ready. These are not opinions. They are patterns observable across countless lives. So here is the challenge, stated plainly and without theatrics. Today, not tomorrow, you choose one difficult, necessary action, and you do it. You do not wait for motivation. You do not negotiate endlessly. You act, and tomorrow, you do it again. You keep the promise small, but you keep it consistently. You let action teach you who you are becoming. Because if you refuse to choose your burden, life will choose one for you, and it will not be kind. Start today. Start deliberately. Not because it's easy, but because your future self is already watching, and either thanking you or quietly resenting you for the choice you make right now.